Howdy, howdy, everybody. It is a beautiful Thursday out here in San Diego, and today we have a very talented architectural photographer from down in Australia that will be joining us today on a chat, and I'm sure he'll be able to tell you a little bit more about himself in a little bit here, but just wanted to say that it's pretty amazing everything that's been going on and the welcoming that everyone has so kindly done with enjoying these videos and joining along. And I really want to say thank you to everybody for welcoming me into your home and joining and the continued support. I had done an interview for KPBS that actually aired on NPR today, which was really exciting and really very unexpected. But here's the excitement of today, Mr. Andy himself.
Hey,
A very
hey, mate. How are you?
great, very talented photographer from down in Australia. He knows everything that's happened tomorrow for us. So is Trump still doing strange stuff? Not
Oh
joking.
yeah. I don't think he'll ever stop. I don't think he'll ever stop doing strange stuff.
That is the man for the future. Thank
That's
you
it,
for.
mate.
So how are you
Yeah,
doing today?
mate. I'm doing good. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. This is it's cool what you're doing. I think it's nice. All these. I mean, there's so many sort of cool things happening on the internet right now. But doing good. I mean, Australia, we've been far less affected by COVID. So so I've been back shooting. So I shot a development yesterday with no one around, and beautiful little project. And I got up at 3:30 in the morning to do that. So I'm feeling it a little bit today. But yeah, how are you, mate?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm keeping my spirits up, and work has slowly trickled in, and actually, as the things start changing, there's been some bright sides to people talking about getting things moving again, which is really beautiful for me.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, I know that we had a kind of a conversation how you've been very lucky and fortunate to get places alone before they've been handed over to clients. And, a couple of those have come my way. So I'm just trying to follow your coattails on this one.
Oh, it's good,
So
man. Oh, it's good to hear. Yeah. Yep.
before we get too far into this conversation about photography, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the community, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yep. So my name's Andy Macpherson, and I'm a photographer. I live in this part of the world called Kingscliff, which is actually like a tiny town, like virtually like would be considered almost the middle of nowhere in the very northeast coast of Australia. And I work with architects predominantly shooting buildings and mainly residential houses. So that's my day to day vocation, but it's also something I do because it's what I do. I love buildings. So yeah.
So did you get into photography first, or did you get into architecture first?
Um, Probably both. When I was so when I was young, I was a surfer, and I wanted to always sort of document my friends surfing. So I picked up 35 millimeter little cameras, point and shoot cameras as a kid, and we'd go down to the 1 hour photo and get them developed. And then I wanted to video stuff because I was sort of like like kids have this saying down like now, like pics or it didn't happen, and and back in the day with surfing, it's like, your mates would be like, oh, this guy just did the best move or whatever. And I was like, oh, I better film this stuff because otherwise no one's going to believe us. And so I got into doing video and I studied that for a little bit, just as a result. And then buildings, I was never an architecture nerd, but I was always fascinated by the built environment. Like I lived near Sydney, or in Sydney and near the CBD growing up. And I was just always amazed at more by engineering, to be honest, was inspirational. It's like, how do these things get built and how do they stay standing? Some of these really big buildings that really fascinated me. And then the love and like deep diving in on actual architecture itself came a lot later.
Wh- So when did you start seeing yourself looking at architecture in a new light? When you're
Oh,
younger, or
no, not until I moved. So I moved from Sydney as part of my sort of my day job at the time, which was working with a coffee roaster, and I came in to set up a outpost up here in 2011 for them, and then I met a mate named Josh, who's one of the top engineers. Josh Neal is his name. He works for an engineering firm called Westra Partners, and I connected with him, and he was just so passionate about architecture. Like he's a design engineer, and he was really rare. Like he's not that sort of over engineering. He was really passionate about architecture and design, and so that probably led me to thinking more critically about spaces and architecture.
that's amazing. Sorry, so
Yeah.
I also have to say I live next to a trolley, so
Oh,
you
okay.
get
That's
this.
a
Yeah,
tram.
yeah, you get this occasional beautiful hum that comes from the street side.
Yeah, cool. I
So
like it.
so so when you went to university, did you go to university to study film, or was that kind
Oh,
of just a trade that you went into?
yeah. So I actually went. So 2003, I went to university to study media and communications, and then I majored in film. And so I did some your first year of uni, you did like a generalist course, and so I chose video production. And gosh, it's changed. Like back then, it was like mini DV tapes and like half analog, and like Final Cut was in its early stages, and then but you kind of like did a bit of everything. So I studied that for a couple of years, and then my I kind of it felt pointless. Like I didn't know what I want to do, so I just sort of left. And I was kind of a late bloomer in my career. I was just always followed my own interest in like work was like a means to an end, so I could get out and go surfing or hang out with my mates or pursue some other thing. And so uni felt kind of pointless to me because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I did almost 2 years of that degree. But I'm thankful for what I did. I learned a couple of things about how to structure good text for emails and stuff. And I swear, like the one lecture I probably paid attention to, like, has given me more value professionally in the last, like, you know, like 20 years or whatever since I've been at uni. Like, like it's given, I'm not 20 years, like 15 or so years has given me more value than, I literally just listened to one lecture at uni. I've got my money's worth from that one, and it was just all about how to structure text on the internet, which was again in its early days, like 2003. I think like Google was probably a thing, but we grew up in like Alta Vista. I grew up in like Alta Vista search engine territory or whatever that was. Netscape Navigator time. So yeah, so that was cool. And then I studied some film, and that really stayed with me, like some actual film. So part of my degree was studying like Blade Runner as like a neo noir, like a noir movie, and we studied really early German cinema and a lot of those Japanese cinema, like a lot of that stuff. Cinematography sort of stuck with me, and I think we were chatting about this before we went on, but like stills is like it's trying to translate a cinematic experience into your photos to a degree, and that's hard to do. Blade Runner, yeah. So yeah, and then like basically like we went traveling. Photography fell off my radar, and I was working in a sales and somewhat marketing role for a long, like 10 years doing that, and I just felt so dissatisfied. I enjoyed the creative aspect of problem solving, but I've always wanted to create things and create a body of work, even though that wasn't like a clear thought in my mind, but I realized that in hindsight, and I was never satisfied. And now I'm doing something that's, got the best of, the best of everything. What kind of glasses? There's a cheap ones from Zenny. Look, I've got my name inscribed in them because I lose them so much. Maybe you can see that. Cost me $2 US, but I did it. So anyway, so I hope that's not boring too many people or whatever. But that's yeah,
No, that's a beautiful
that's
thing.
my career path.
I think that's pretty amazing, though, that you went away for a little bit, but you decided to come back, and uh, ultimately, to relive this passion. Was that a hard choice for you? I mean, looking into photography is kind of is kind of throwing your money into the air and hoping
Mm.
that it that it comes back down.
No, it's good. Thanks, Taitano. Yeah, look, I transitioned slowly. I was really fortunate. I left to start a marketing business originally because again, like, but it was more driven as I think I want to be a creative director. That was sort of, so I left my day job to start a marketing business, and we'd owned some property in Sydney when we moved, and we'd sold that, and we probably had enough to get a nice little house deposit. But I convinced my wife that we should invest it in a business because, like, you could get a house at any time. But yeah, I pissed away a lot of money pretty quickly um, starting this. But that's how like very quite seminal way of how I end up shooting architecture. I was writing a marketing brief for my mate's engineering firm, and I happened to photograph some buildings, and I got hooked on that. And I got hooked on seeing some really amazing photographs. So yeah, I just saw an image in that time and just went, I have to do this. It was something, whatever. And yeah, so that was scary. There was a moment, but I was really lucky, and I had a great relationship with my old employers. And they actually, at the time, I was probably like really needing some cash, to provide, because we'd had a daughter by then. And they asked me to come back, and I said, can I come back part time? And pursue my photography on the side. And they said, yeah, absolutely. So I was so lucky. And then I just transitioned out slowly the second time around. So the first time around, I wouldn't recommend if you're going to considering a career in photography. Don't just leap with like desperately like to, I was desperate to get out and do something for myself, but I just leapt so soon. It was pretty bad, and I was really lucky to get out of it, to scrape out of it, and then, yeah, I'll just do your day job and do this on the side for as long as you can until you're ready to go, especially if you've got kids. We've got 3 now. So I'm thankful photography can provide for 3 people or for 5 people.
No, that's quite amazing. And when you say holding both jobs, as a young photographer myself, and I look at a lot of you guys that have been in the business for 10, 20 years, and it really makes me, I hate to say it, but feel good that this is a slow process. Maybe not feel good, but gives me an understanding that it takes a lot. I think a lot of times people forget. They see people just come up in the world, and sometimes it's just the fact, because Instagram is still a very young platform, that all of a sudden people appear, and now you know about them, and they have 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 followers. But that didn't happen just by throwing your money out, buying a nice camera, buying some lights, and making some Instagram ads. It took a lot of work, and I appreciate that message that you shared.
Yeah,
Because
it does. Yeah,
because it
yeah.
often gets lost. Instagram is just instant gratification, and
No, yeah, so true.
and like you had just said, like you went out the first time, and you were lucky enough to have something to come back to help you a little bit, which the world is really lucky that you came back a second time, and that you had that opportunity to keep going, because your work is just absolutely amazing. And talking about how film and cinematography really plays into what you set up in your photos is very like obvious, and it's a point that I love to talk about more. So now it's 2020. You've been a rock star in the photography community, and you're doing a podcast. You have a photography career, which has helped many architects document their projects. I'd love to hear about what you're doing now,
Yeah.
and
Oh, thank
expand
you.
on what you are doing. And
Yeah, thanks, man. It's very kind, generous words. So what am I doing now? Coming back to your point, yeah, is you see that you scroll through a feed and you see a really pretty picture, and you see pictures that stand out, and I think the ones that stand out is when you go, some people take great images, and they go 95% of the way with certain things. But I think the ones where you push it and push it and push it in your refinement, and that might not just happen on a single image, that might happen from just repetition and the commitment to continuous improvement. Those images will hopefully resonate with you even when you're scrolling through some algorithm affected feed, but I think that's the point. It's like that the difference between an image that resonates and sticks with someone and one that doesn't is probably obsession, and all that, and I think you have to be obsessed to do this. So what am I working on now? I'm working on my understanding of architecture. So, hello, Tram. Hello,
Yeah, he really wanted that one.
Yeah, he's there. So I'm working on a couple of things. With the whole COVID thing, I thought it was a good time. Things have sort of slowed down for a couple of weeks. So I decided to start picking up some personal projects. I'd always wanted to shoot film, and I've never shot on 4x5. So I've been trying to progress to shoot on larger format, because I feel like after doing digital so long, I can almost rock up and I've got a style that people expect of me commercially. So I can rock up and almost plonk my tripod in the exact spot that I need it to be for that composition that people expect of me, without even I can literally just walk straight to it now. Do you know what I mean? And I think the dance is still enjoyable because you have this very finite period of time. I like light to fall on a building in a particular way, and you have a really finite time that happens. But so you've got to be quick, and that's why if you ever see any of my behind the scenes work, I don't tether. I literally just have a remote trigger, a lens, and a tripod and a camera, and I rush around like a madman. I had a mate assisting me yesterday, COVID safe hashtag, and he was like, man, I could see the method to the madness, but if anyone was watching what you did, it would be so haphazard to them. And you just see me moving the tripod a couple of mils, playing with the shift of the lens just a couple of mils, rotating the shift lens a tiny degree, and I'm probably just doing it in this very frantic sort of way, thinking, oh shit, that light's gonna go in a minute. I better friggin' get this shot. But I'm just pedanticizing because I want to get it right in camera, and so it's a long way of saying. And now I've kind of want to take that to the next level and enjoy the dance a bit more because it's so quick. I'm always having a quickie at my shoots, not a, so I've been experimenting with 35mm because that's cheap and easy, and I actually enjoy it because it's quite a democratized film, because everyone shot 35mm, so it's some nice familiarity with the format, and then I can also chuck my shift lenses and have perspective control very easily because that's a Canon EF body. So I've been shooting on my 17mm and my 24mm and even my 90mm shift lens, and stuff. So that's been exciting. And so I'm working on a personal project at the moment about architecture in progress, because I think we have renders now. Sometimes we have photos that look like renders, and we have this missing middle part of the process. And it's more of an analogy of me understanding that I'm always in this process that just evolves and adds to and all of that. In the same way, architects are always in a process, and you're like this culmination of millions of snapshots of influence and influences and things you've seen and all of this, stuff that's sort of you're semi-cognizant of, and it comes out in an instant, when you take a photograph. And so and so often we're obsessed with the finished product. So I want to go back and go I'm a photographer at a certain point in my career. I'm never going to arrive. An architect hopefully feels they're never going to arrive. And so can we make a statement about the built form that also mirrors where the architects are at? And so there's also why I'm taking portraiture on site. So when I'm there with the architect, I'll take their portrait in their unfinished work, and just try and, it's hard, you don't want them to pose, but also it's film, and so you don't I want to burn off 5 shots and all of them are blurry or something, so yeah. Especially I'm trying to shoot on quite low ISO films, but I'm carrying 2 now, an ISO 400 and ISO 100 film, so I can get a nice clean publishable shot, and then I'll get a nice 400, which I think works for portraits really nicely.
Hmm.
It's very, very acceptable. So yeah, so I can
So
be
would
more
you say
candid.
that you had mentioned earlier that part of your want in life is to educate yourself a little bit more in architecture.
Mm.
Is this project of yours kind of that exploration into architecture and learning a little bit more and taking that next step?
Um, no, yes and no. I think it's more people. Like I'm probably more interested in people for this one, so it's more like and like it's probably both. Like, and I kind of happen just to cross paths anyway. So I'm really
Hmm.
interested in, and the same reason I started the BAM podcast is I'm interested in people's stories probably more than architecture. Yeah, there is an exploratory thing around architecture, but I'm more in this particular project interested where people are at in that particular stage of their career. So it's like a snapshot of maybe like an early career or a mid career or a late career architect and what part of the process they see themselves in, if there is any. It's like it's not a linear pursuit either. That's what we love, like to have like yes, like very like what's that word, like there's like that dichotomy in our thinking of like it's wrong, right, yes, no. There's a clip, like there's a path, but there's just that you will progress, but like that you're also like, and you're going to get more talented, whatever, but it's not linear.
Hmm.
Art and architecture, I don't think is linear, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Mm.
And then, wow, I had a question in there, but it went to my head. But we did have a question on how you scan your film. Are you doing that TIFF or
Oh,
JPEG?
yeah. So I'm using a lab at the moment, but I'll get TIFFs back, and just like I'll do a little bit of cleanup because invariably on your scans you're going to get a bit of hair and dust and stuff. So I'll get TIFFs, and sometimes I'll tone things back a little bit, or you get guys and the scan, like they might use a scanner that puts a bit more magenta into some stuff, and so which isn't actually in the film because like it's a scanning issue, not a film issue, and so I try and get things back closer to the stock, and I'll bastardize it just a little bit because I think, hey, it's not a I'm not a film purist. I love the process and the results and the texture you get from grain because it's like an emulsion. It's not a
Hmm.
ones and zeros, and I think that's why it's so attractive to so many people. It's yeah, I'm happy to bastardize it because like I was born, I'm brought up in the digital age of photography, so I have no qualms. It's just about getting a good end result.
So, kind of going back to the question that was in my mind, it came back to me
Mm.
while you're talking. Sorry.
Yeah,
When you,
well, I was crapping on.
it's good to have a little questions in the middle. But
Yeah.
you said you talked about documenting.
Yes.
When you go and you shoot a project, are you going like we all want you go to that one spot, you're really like just drawn to those spots as you said. But when you go to projects, how do you approach them? I mean, are you going there to document the life? Are you going there because it's a job and you know what the
Mm,
angles are? What's your
mm.
approach when you get there?
It's kind of both. It's project specific. Um, it's a good question. I am normally concerned with the aesthetic of the space, but I'm becoming increasingly concerned with like the apertures of a space, which sort of sounds wanky, but it's about there's places where you stand in a house and you have a distinct point of view that you can't always get with a wide hero shot.
Mhm.
And it's also like you don't want to. So there's that, and you equally don't want to. You want to try and communicate your experience of the space, and that's a much more challenging thing. So I'm thinking about how am I going to actually communicate the experience of being inside a space, and so often marketing shots are like you isolate a room, and it's like room porn, and same with the building. And I'm so guilty of this because you do want to objectify a building because there are pretty things, as much of that's a bastardization of that term. But so there is that, and there is creating a pretty picture. And I do love thinking about the end result, but it's also like my new thing is like if there's something, not new thing, but I've always thought like, how do I communicate what it's like to be in this space. And so that's probably, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking documentary. I'm thinking storytelling. I think there's twofold thing. I think the storytelling can form a lot of the marketing. So how do we inhabit the space? How did it get here? Those kind of questions. And then I think the documentary process, like this is the object. Like here it is. Like here's a documentation of this building, and the storytelling is more like how we inhabited the space. And that's probably where people come in, or objects, or styling.
Mm-hmm. And then also your film background, because you had mentioned earlier how all that was such a creative part of your life, and it's great to see like how you've progressed as a photographer and talking right now, and then also always moving back to what was true to yourself. I think that's really beautiful, because again, with architecture, how it's not a straight linear line. You talk about yourself in the same way, and that story is really an important story to remember, especially because who you are and what makes you such a special photographer. It talks about that story of why you shoot like you do today, and I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate hearing that too.
No, it's very kind. No, thank you. It's generous. Leonard's asking how long are my shoots. Mate, anywhere from, I'd say minimum these days would be 5 to 6 hours, and then in summer like 15 hours. But I traveling to I live 90 minutes south of a place called Brisbane, which is our major city, and 80% of my work's there. So it's 3 hours of travel minimum for most shoots now, which is pretty tough. I eat a lot of junk food, so on the road, a lot of burgers. Reward myself. It hasn't been good for the waistline. Thanks, bro.
We have to, though. We have to.
We got to get something.
It's always great working with architects, and they're always kind, and I'm sure they're kind to you as well. And but we still need to do something for ourselves sometimes, and on a 3-hour ride home, a burger in the middle is amazing.
Yeah, it's hard to eat, but it is, yeah, mate. It totally. I definitely indulge a bit too much, but these days, but it is nice, And coming back, I feel incredibly lucky. There's this threshold you have to cross, as a photographer. And there's probably stages of that where to get the trust of an architect. And so the people that gave me my first gigs, when there's like buildings that like they've invested a lot in, they're like giving the new guy a go on that building. I'm so indebted to them, because that's pretty serious thing, isn't it? Like when you go, he's a guy that's an unknown quantity, and I've got a building that's amazing, and I've spent a few years on it. Oh, well, we'll give him a crack. Like, it's a graduation of sort. And it's important for your career. And so the first really serious one I shot, I was absolutely crapped myself, and I'd been like practicing, and I'd flick my camera over to like a different setting, a JPEG setting. I was so nervous when I got there. I shot the whole shoot on JPEGs, so I had like no latitude in the files. But then we ended up getting that one published in like a really amazing mag. I've got it here actually. If I can find it, I'll show it to you.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's I shot this, and then I was hell bent on getting, and so I wanted to I was just felt indebted to the architect for the go, and for having it's in one of my favorite mags called Habitus, but this is the shot. The new Andy would have edited out all these downlights. I hate them. My new thing is to pretend everything's just strip LED lights. It's a drawing from my daughter.
Beautiful.
To Dad, happy Easter. I love it. So yeah, that was that shoot, and I think they were stoked, so it was.
I'd be pretty stoked if I shot all those shots on JPEG and didn't have to worry about too much dynamic range being pulled out of the photos.
Oh, I think I was lucky, and yeah, totally. I mean, we get such harsh climate and hard sun up here. I mean, you can even probably this one probably irrelevant, but you can probably see on the right here, it's fine in print, but this completely blown out, there's a really beautiful reflection looking out to the ocean in that door. Obviously I didn't have the latitude to get that back in the JPEG, but you live and you learn. I don't think he noticed. And then, if you look at, this is some of the stuff I did yesterday. I'm just having a quick look, like in terms of like, just how different and clean it is. And, like a little trade secret is there was downlights everywhere here, which I think are highly distracting and irrelevant to the architecture. So these are everything. One thing I do too with I know we weren't going to talk about the trade too much.
Hey, let's
more
talk.
Stories. But the idea is like, I like to go a bit later so that, say we couldn't vignette the frame with these palms, which I think are really important, and same with this tree, if something was there, we get a little bit of a reflection of what's happening around us, which contextualizes the architecture. So I like going a bit later or earlier, like, imagine this was a different shape here, and maybe we shot really early and it was just the glow here, and this became like almost like a monolithic object, and I think like so often we're like obsessed with getting the perfect balance in our twilight, these sort of images. It looks a bit warmer on my phone screen too. It's a lot cooler in this image, but yeah, anyway, just as an aside, yeah. So
No, I love that talk. I love that talk
Yeah.
because I find myself doing the same thing. And when people think of architectural photography and they're like, oh, you just go out there and you take a picture and then you're done. But I mean, we're up there before the sun comes up because that's my favorite time to shoot. My favorite time to get
Same.
that outdoor hero shot is, a half hour, an hour, depending on the time of the year before the sun comes up. And then a half hour to an hour after the sun goes down, and you just have no shadow, you have no direct light. It's just beautiful.
Nice
and
soft.
yeah, and like you said, you're out there from 3 a.m. until 9 p.m. now, and that's a pretty full day, I'd say. It's not.
Yeah, you're pretty exhausted. But the thing, like to your point though, like I'm out there for like I'm out there for like the first 90 minutes of the day and the last 90 minutes of the day. I don't care about the stuff that happens in between unless there's some sort of skylight in the house or something that it was interesting yesterday, actually. I didn't anticipate this. There's this like kitchen with a big panoramic splashback window, and I just didn't anticipate that just as we were leaving. So that was like about a 5-6 hour shoot. But just as we were leaving, the sun went out to the north and went through these high palm trees and created all these shadows. I find that these are unedited shots, mind you, but you'll see what I mean.
We'll be kind. We'll be kind.
See all these
Wow.
see all these beautiful shadows coming through the back, which sort of is coming through these palms. But that was just as the sun, as you can see from the really hard angles of the shadows. That happened at about 10:30 in the morning, and I didn't anticipate that happening. And it was sort of the light was bouncing off these back walls, illuminating things. And one thing too is like when you have directional light, is you see this light here. When you have a big bit of concrete, the idea is you can shoot this stuff virtually any time because the light's going to graduate from light to dark across the frame because it's going to bounce off here like a giant sun reflector and illuminate this stuff in the foreground. So it's like, it's the cheats way of lighting things, and so I think about that stuff all the time in shoots. But I didn't anticipate this backlight that I'm showing you here. I'd shot it actually earlier in the day and it was just half as compelling as this image, so yeah.
I love the foreground with the couch in there, just a little bit talking about it, and then having everything in the
Thanks,
background like that. That's really well composed, and
Thank you.
that's another really amazing thing about. It's hard to convince a client to say, "Hey, I think it's really important to be at this house all day." And then you hand them the check, the estimated cost, the proposal, and they're like, "Ooh, like that all day shoot doesn't seem so good." And then they're like,
totally.
"Well," and then they're like, "Well, what about 5 or 6 hours?" And we can always get it done in that amount of time, but that moment that you just described right there, it's something that it's hard to come by unless you're there and you can really see it.
Yeah.
As a
You have to be there.
photographer, and sometimes
100%.
I even ask my clients if they're only if they're only interested in the 5 hours, I say to them, I say, well, if you could do something for me, send me pictures throughout the day. Send me a picture
Mm.
at this time, at
Yeah.
this time, at this time,
Mm.
because if I'm the one making the decision, that's a really tough call to say, well, what are we going to do, evening or morning? And
Mm.
having those moments is exactly what makes life beautiful.
Mm. Yeah. No, exactly right. And that's that thing. Like, I was listening to the Zoomed In festival. I don't know if you've been listening to that, but
Oh yeah.
it's been fantastic. But I think it was Helen Benet, who's my favorite photographer, which is amazing to see her because she's like, an absolute industry legend. It's like, oh, it's like, I don't know, it's like I don't know, like getting Wes Anderson onto a chat or something in my mind. Like it's that level of genius. But she was just talking about this thing, how it's very considered, but it also has to be really reactive what we do. And so it's that thing.
Uh, Hold up. It looks like we have a quick bounce of internet real quick here. I don't know if you can hear me on your side. Sorry, world. Let's just let this happen for a little bit and see if it bounces back for us here. Wow, what a talk though. Oh no, looks like we lost him real quick. So let's wait a couple of minutes, and I think he'll come back on this chat. Maybe his phone died or something. But just an absolutely wild conversation. I think it's pretty awesome. As a photographer, we all spend a lot of time really nerding out into these kind of scenarios and what happens. And conversations like this might be a little bit heavy for some people, but I think shares a lot of what we're coming from and the way that we look at things. And from a guy with a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, I think it really is important for all of us to pay attention here. So let's give it a couple more minutes and see if he comes back here, and if we can continue this conversation with him. But if not, I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope people have been really interested in this because it's been really great for me. Another news, I guess I can kind of go back to what I had earlier said about everything that has been happening lately with these conversations. I just have really been excited for how everyone has received all this and welcomed all this into their lives and suggested people and asked questions. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you guys for welcoming so much and just being such a participant in all of this. So let me see. Right now, it's not really allowing me to add anybody right now. So I might just end that one there. I really suggest checking out his work. He's obviously, as you've seen, and he's just an amazing. He's quite nice. Oh, we got him back. We won't end it right here. Lucky us. Let's just, here we go.
I'm
We're
back.
back.
I'm sorry.
Life is good.
Life is good. Sorry, mate. I don't know what happened there. My phone just turned itself off, but it wasn't a battery thing. And
You're
I'm
telling,
rolling on an iPhone 6, so
you're giving out too much information. You know,
I
the
know.
higher ups in the architecture community said, "Nuh-uh, you gotta
We
stop him
keep-
before he gives away secrets."
get to yeah. We've worked hard for these secrets. Oh, it's so funny. But just want to just say it's so good that you're doing this series. I think it's the stuff I've seen's been great. So
I really appreciate that.
mm.
So you're just talking about the Zoom meetings from
Yeah. Well, The
from the big
London one.
architecture convention. Something I really suggest everyone to take some time and listen to if they're architectural
Mm.
photographers or even architects. I think that's a really interesting conversation to listen to from both sides.
No, I agree. Yeah, and it's even like the one I was listening to last night was what was the hang on, I forgot the name of the project, but it was the one Walmer Yard, and it was the three. So I had a guy that was a music video producer that shot it. A guy named Jim Stevenson is a brilliant architecture photographer, more in our kin in terms of like modern digital, and then Helen Benet, who's shooting film and has a much different process. So three different processes, but it was the architect that booked them from the marketing firm. The architect who worked for the the marketer from the architecture firm. We got there, and she was talking about why she booked them. And the process and the brief and all of that. And so I think even if if anyone into the built environment, architect, builder, I think there's so much value there. I was fascinated by it. I thought it was incredible. It's fantastic. And a young guy, Luke O'Donovan, I think was the guy organising. He's just done a brilliant job.
That's fantastic. And talking about amazing things that people are doing in the community, I'd love for you to talk about your BAM podcast. You guys have done an amazing job with that, and kind of unknown to me, we had kind of started talking before I realized that you were one of the gents that was out there.
Yeah. Doing it. Yeah, I know. You picked up the phone like, oh, I know your voice. Yeah, so look, the BAM podcast is, so it's BAAM, which is Barry and Andy Mack. So it's sort of like I had this when I was thinking about the name, I was thinking about this comic book that Bjarke Ingels did called Yes Is More, which is his philosophy on architecture, and he did it as a comic book. And I sort of like I think I had that in the back of my mind where I was like, damn, like, you could see it as like a comic, sort of thing. That was the idea. And architecture is very like, especially in our country, the marketing is always very sophisticated and reserved, and I just wanted to do something that was sort of fun and a bit cheesy with the name. So BAM Podcast, we just aimed to interview the best photographers, and it was just for me as a fanboy, because I would drive so much, as I mentioned earlier, and I would always be looking for stuff from the photographers I admired, and there's just no comprehensive thing out there. And I thought, someone's got to interview these people. And I was just thinking that for weeks. Yeah. And I was like, someone's going to do this, surely. Someone's going to like do a podcast. And then I thought, oh shit, no one's going to do it. So I called Barry, who'd had experience. Like, Barry was on one before, and he'd left. And he's good because he comes from like a really different point of view. To me, it was great, but we become really great mates. And it started as a bit of an excuse to hang out and drink beer and chat on the internet, to be honest. And now we don't need that anymore with COVID. But then also an excuse to interview people. And I was really inspired by podcasts that are out there, like Mark Maron's podcast, which is called WTF, which is where he long-form interviews of these actors and comedians that you've probably never considered their career. And I just found it so fascinating. And so I thought, oh, these photographers need it. And in my mind, it was like trying to get Steven Spielberg to agree to an interview. That's like where the sort of like where I hold the esteem I hold these photographers in, both my contemporaries and some of the older crew, and even some of the new guys. But and so I thought, like, it's going to be impenetrable wall to get these people on the show, and like you just like email them and they get back like, absolutely, like, because you learn it's such an obscure celebrity, and probably so few people ask them on a daily basis about their career and their story, like come like this, that they're like, oh, you're interested, And I was like, absolutely. And hopefully, like, because Barry and I are in the game, like we have the empathy and hopefully the respect to be in that position of authority in a way to ask those questions.
And you've done an amazing job on there. I love listening to your podcast. I find myself, I find myself trying to find personal time where I step away from architecture and I go on a bike ride. But then I actually bring myself back into architecture. So I'm like, hey, this is a perfect time to listen to BAM podcast. And just get
awesome.
ultimately just inspired by the interviews that you guys have had, by the insight that you guys share. I know that sometimes you've mentioned people don't don't get so interested when you guys ramble on in the beginning, but I
Yeah.
find those times so good, and
Oh, cool.
I've laughed
Oh,
pretty
good.
hard.
Oh, thank you. That's good. Yeah, we've had some mixed feedback. Hey, Dan Young. Hey, Barry calls me Cinnamon. That's we'll go into a. Hey Barry, I love you. Hey Dan Young. Dan Young, who's joined, is an amazing landscape architect. So check out his work up in Brizzy. But yeah, so we. Sorry, I double back. Sorry, Durkin Films. Where can I find the Zoomed In Festival? Just Google Zoomed In Festival, and it'll be the top hit in Google. And then they've uploaded all of the lectures and so all the like Zoom stuff in. You can rewatch them all. So I've been listening to them because some are happening at like 2 a.m. So I've been re-listening to them as I'm working, which is nice. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there, but
No, it's all
life's
right.
good.
Life is good.
In the band podcast, yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. We've had such mixed feedback on some of those intros, and then it's funny, like I've become so much more of a swearer doing what I do. I think it's because I'm up early and I get frustrated because I'm tired. And I was like, I've been like trying to tone it back and make it a bit more professional because it's not normally my MO. But but I'm glad you're enjoying that. I love riffing with Barry. It's good. It's good fun chatting, and it's funny because we're like I said before, we're almost like nerdy fanboys in a way. So we hope we don't make it too awkward for any of the guests. But it was like, we love your work.
Yeah, tell us more, please share.
Yeah, please.
Hey,
Yeah.
I kind of see a connection right here. Kind of how,
Yeah.
how we're talking right now.
Oh, it's good, man. And like I said, it's just about doing something fun. Like I think, like it's an industry that can take itself seriously, but it's like I always remind myself, like, yeah, buildings are important, but like we're not saving lives. Like we might be contributing to, architecture's contributing to society, but at the end of the day, like the building, if we miss a shot or what or something, the building's not going to fall down. Like it's not life or death.
You know what though? What we do is actually I really come at it in a way that what we do is very important. I think 99% of the world will never be able to see some of the places that we get to go into, and some of the beautiful design that we get to see, and we are the vessel that shares that information out into the world. And there is a lot of stuff out there that's very mediocre, and and what we get to do and to help share the world, it's gonna push everything further. And your work reaches so many people, and it's so meaningful to show the rest of the world of what good design is and what we should be looking for. And the BAM podcast, when you share these architectural photographers, people now can go and look at their work and be inspired and look for something in our futures. It's quite amazing what we do. And yeah, we're not saving lives, but we're saving the world in our own little way, I think. So ending
That's beautiful.
Wrapping.
I like that.
Kind of wrapping this up. This is a COVID time, and architecture thrives on change and different kind of circumstances. I'd love to hear if you have any insight on how you think architecture is going to change.
It's a good question. Firstly, thanks, Mike Kelly. I think Ian wins this round, but I have a weird thing of directly complimenting men. But yeah, look, I don't know. Like so the job I was shooting yesterday, for example, was for a developer and an architect. But the developer was who I was liaising with yesterday, and he's really confident. Australia is interesting, like because we're so isolated and we've been really lucky. Like we're only like 6,000 cases. The chance of COVID really affecting us, it obviously going to affect us on a global level, but in terms of our local economies, I think it's going to be a much less of an impact here. It's all being highly speculative. I'll be interested to see how design is going to impact. I just some architects out there with some amazing imaginations. Like I saw some guys overseas who have been designing face masks. I think I might even call mask architects. I'll have to send a link, but that's been interesting. So they've turned that that very practical problem solving. A face mask. There was just a face mask.
Yep.
And now architects are looking at something, a ubiquitous thing in a fresh light, and it's trust architects to do something like that because they're constantly tasked with, like you said before, reimagining the built environment and reimagining how we interpret and live in society. So I'll have to find that, but I think that's one great example. Look, it could only be speculative. I think it's going to be far different to a country like yours with a lot more people condensed across a whole nation compared to ours, where we have a huge country with a much smaller population spread across a long coastline. Mainly, 80% of us live across this east coast, or more across the east coast. So I don't know, man. It's a good question. I wish I was an architect because I'm sure some guy out there's got the answer. I don't know.
Hey, well, I mean, it's a good answer, and it's what's happening in your world, and that's the most important thing that we're trying to touch on right now, is your world and your reality. And
Yeah.
I'm very happy to hear that you guys are doing well. I'm very happy to hear that you're doing well. It's been a great conversation, and
Thanks, man.
if there's anything that you would like to add to kind of close this out, and then also a way for people, just a reminder of how to get in touch with you, those that have logged on that maybe don't know about the podcast or yourself, just a great reminder.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, thanks again for doing this. Closing remarks is just take care of each other. It's a good time to reevaluate what's important, I think, before the world starts up again. Hopefully this actually affects the way we're living and it doesn't go back to business as usual. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we can reevaluate right now, this is like in a way, there's a gift. It's, as much as it's a terrible thing for so many people, there's a gift that's wrapped up in a shitty package, So yeah, I'd say that's definitely something that's been on my radar. So I hope that's true for you guys, and stay positive and look after each other. And then, if you want to find me, just Instagram's probably my main portal. I don't really do Facebook or anything. Feel free to follow or drop me a message or whatever. And then, and Ian. Yeah,
Click that button up top.
And Ian, check out Ian's work. And then, BAM Podcast, which is just BAAM. Feel free to check out any of that. We've had like Mike Kelly, who's in here on, and we've had Emma Peter, who's amazing. We've had Derek. We've had the Double Space guys. We've had Jack Lovell. And then Barry and I did a little episode. But mate, we're going to go Euro next. I think Euro or Simon DeWitt from New Zealand, because we've covered a fair bit of North America and a couple of Australians. So that's the next episode. I think is getting someone, maybe someone from the UK or even maybe
Central and South America.
Deep down into Latin America, who knows?
Yeah,
lots of fun. Totally. We tried to get Fernando Guerra, but it's like, oh, I'm private. I don't give many interviews. And I was like, dude, you're just doing a whole movie about yourself. Surely you can spare some time to be on the podcast. And he was like, oh no, he's very gracious. He was actually very. He
is very gracious. I love him. I've been able to have a couple of conversations with him, and he's a really nice guy. And I've asked him to come on here, and I got the same answer. And I had to respect that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I hate about rock stars. I've tried to get Iwan Barn, but maybe he's grounded. There's a few dreams. I'd love to get. Obviously Helene Benet, but Barry would do all the interview questions because I'd be too starstruck. I think, as nerdy as that sounds. So, I know we got a few, man. I'd love to. Yeah, anyway. Well, I could go on forever, mate. We'll leave it there, but thank you so much for doing this and for the invitation to be on.
Hey, well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing so much of your knowledge and having a great conversation. From one bearded man to another great bearded man, I have to say thank you so much, and have a great day.
Pleasure.
And we'll be talking.
All right, buddy.
Hey,
thank you. You
take care.
Too. Thanks again.
Bye. So I'm really happy that we were able to finish that up. The last kind of bits of information were really just quite amazing, and what a personality he has. So I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. I really appreciate all the questions, all the comments, and again, as we end this day and as we come to the end of this week, I just want to say the same thing as I do with all these. Just let's keep looking forward. Let's keep our heads up. Let's stay safe and healthy. And as Andy said, let's keep looking after each other because that's the most important thing is community in these times. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day and stay inspired.